I would now like to focus on one of your first clients, who's Sunita Namjoshi. And I would like to ask how and when did your association with her begin?
So Sunita and SJK go back a long way. I think her first project with us started in 1996, so a little bit before Sarika and I even joined the firm. Um, and There's an interesting background to how we started off with Sunita. Sunita approached Shimul, our founder, and at that time, the project she approached her for was for an office. She wanted her own office to be built in Lower Parel, and in Parel, sorry, in an industrial area, and she was already working with an Italian architect at the time, with the local collaborator, and she wasn't. It wasn't the project wasn't going anywhere for her. So her structural engineer, Mr. KD Rajani, is the one who recommended us, and that's how Shimul and Sunita met for the first time. Um, and Yeah, it's been from that point on, we've done almost 12, 13 projects for her. So, I mean, we go back a long way in that sense.
Okay, okay, thank you. I would like to now ask, how do you think her expectations of the design process of the output have shifted over time and projects? Like over all these years, how have you noticed the change?
So I'll begin. I mean, both Sarika and I have worked with her directly on several projects. So I think I'll begin, and perhaps Sarika can add. Um, so to my mind, I feel as a personality, Sunita is just um, as warm and large hearted as she used to be. I mean, there's some aspects to one's personality, I think, that have not her personality that have been absolutely the same. So just to compare, even the first project of hers that I worked on personally, it was a factory at Karur in Tamil Nadu. And right after, we did for her a factory in Bangalore. And while the factory at Karur in Tamil Nadu, we were able to, was also fast paced, but the requirements of the factory at Bangalore were far more pressing in terms of how quickly it needed to be built. And secondly, in Bangalore, it was in the heart of the MIDC area, which had many more restrictions. But um, in general, I feel that the factory in Karur, we were able to innovate a lot more because of the flexibility that um, Sunita as a client, sort of the trust that she places in her architect, um, and just her own spirit, which is really very humane. I mean, she is a businesswoman running very successful businesses, but so she is a professional. She knows when to crack the whip when she needs to, but at the heart of it, I mean, the approach is always very humane. When she came to us for the factory at Karur, her biggest mandate to us for developing the brief was that she wanted a factory where her workers, her people were comfortable. She said they should feel like it's their home, um, and they should feel comfortable. They work long hours, so make sure there's plenty of light and ventilation, and that's it. That was her brief. And so in a way, from that point on, it was about visiting the local factories in Karur, which were nothing to learn positively from. They were like real sweatshops, very pokey little spaces. So but her that underlying thought that what we needed to create needs to be humane, in a way became the start point for our brief. Of course, there was a lot of learning from what is functionally needed in a factory and how a factory has a certain workflow. So we learned from all that, but everything got informed by that need to be humane. So we were able to, and the need that a people should feel like they are at home. So we learned from local materials. I mean, all of that began to influence design. Usage of
Okay.
atanguri tiles, clay tiles, making sure that the overall ambience and atmosphere is really warm and humid. So
Okay.
that was that. And I think at Bangalore, same client, same context, and it was again, we did a factory for her right after the one at Karur. And the Bangalore factory was a bit different because um, I think because of the context, and the mandate was also the same, but the constraints of the site, how height was restricted, um, there was a huge land pressure. I mean, building in an industrial context in the heart of the city, you have different pressures. You need to consume all of your FSI and so on and so forth. So in a way, that is what influenced design there. Um,
Okay.
Sarika, if you'd like to add to that, since you worked on the Bangalore factory.
So, from a business point of view, what Sunita's two factories actually do is Karur is where the fabric thans are checked. So, you're constantly checking for weaves and colors. So, the daylight becomes a very, very important part in seeing true colors and true weaves. While the Bangalore factory is actually her bread and butter for all the made ups. So everything that gets produced in Karur comes to Bangalore and the made ups happen there. So whether it's the cushion covers, whether it's the runners, whether it's the bed sheets, embroideries onto that. So all of that happens there. Bangalore was like, it had to follow its flow chart in terms of seamless planning and in terms of efficient movements. So, where the goods come in, where the goods exit out and goes into the export market, because these are consignments that are actually going into the export market. Um, so there was not much that she had in terms of even time after Karur to try and put in effort in terms of innovation. So the best we tried and did with Bangalore was to try and keep, again, daylight was very important to us. The factory working hours and the way people work within the spaces were completely crucial, and keeping the seamless flow of all the functions across the three levels of various different departmentalization that goes on in terms of factory production was absolutely important. So this was one project where collaboration with her managers at the Bangalore office to develop the flow chart and understand the planning aspect was very important, because she was actually, before uh, culminating into one single space at Bangalore, she was working out of three different workshop spaces in Koramangala. And they already had learnings for three different functions that were happening out of three different spaces. And this one had to actually assimilate all of that to make the flow completely seamless for production. So that's what was Bangalore about. So these were her business spaces that we just spoke about. So these were actually chronologically, all of these worked like Karur was 2003 to 2004, Bangalore was 2004 to 2005, in a very tight timeline again. In 18 months, right from design till handover, this was to be ready. So we handed this over. We started it in June 2004, handed it over Jan 2006. And then starting mid 2006, we started a project for her personal space. Now, this was a land that she had bought in Alibag, and we were brought in to actually, so this is a 3-acre parcel of land. So she came to us, I think, somewhere in 2005, and we had this plot of land known to us. So we actually monitored this whole plot of land for 2 monsoons to try and see what this land is doing. So the former portion of this land is a complete coconut grove, that's 1 acre. The latter portion is another acre, and the portion where you see the kund happening is another acre. So there are 3 acres. And from a topography point of view, this land was the most low lying. Almost 500 meters away from this is the beach line, which is the Nagaon beach in Alibag. And The well, when we actually went into this property and tasted the water in the well water was brackish. This is the lowest land in the region, in the village, and the entire rainwater from across the village was actually coming and getting collected into this third acre of the property. And we actually involved an environmentalist and a water management expert called Dr. Ajit Gokhale and studied this plot for one full monsoon to really see what is going on with this land. And post that monsoon, actually proposed to Sunita that the best way to utilize this entire land was to build a kund, a beautiful stepped kund that could conserve water as well as recharge the entire land so that the brackishness of the water in the well could turn into sweet water. That was the whole exercise. So she came to us with a brief that she actually needed a pool on this property. She needed an outhouse for her caretakers who are a family that live on the property. And she had an old house already, which she did not want to extend or change. And the brief was also that this was going to be the venue for her daughter's wedding. Actually preparing this property for that occasion. As we went ahead, the kund actually gave rise to a beautiful deck. There were existing trees right lined up over there. There was a deck that cantilevered over into the kund, and that actually became the mandap finally. That was never aimed for, but it naturally and organically went in that direction, and this is the way you see it. So post this, what we saw was that otherwise by April, which is the peak of summers that start in Alibag, you need tanker water in this region because they don't have water. But post this whole exercise, this particular property needed no water. They were self-sufficient completely with the way the percolations worked and with the way the well was full even all through end of May before the next rain started by about first week of June. So this was like literally a vision that I don't think any other client would have foreseen it, that you're actually doing good, not just for yourself and your land, but you're actually changing the way the whole village works. And the whole problem that was actually culminating into her property, she changed that into an opportunity by being very graceful in terms of accepting ours and Dr. Gokhale's ideas of actually making this into a stepped kund and conserving water. That's another project that Sunita was the client for, and completely different from the business aspect of what you would have seen in the previous projects. So that's what Nagaon did.
Just, about this project, I feel it's one of our landmarks only in that this small private residence. So the brief for this was everything related to what you would normally apply to a private residence. But really, in the process of developing the brief, it got converted into the strength of this kund is that it's accepting the water from the whole village and dealing with it, rather than the easiest thing would have been to build over, just throw land into the side, build over and say, we don't want this water, we can just be higher than everybody else. That would have been everybody's approach. But really, in accepting this water, holding it within this land, a lot of the issues that the entire village was facing was we were able to deal with. And this was just through the development of the brief in involving Dr. Gokhale. That is how all of it happened. So I feel it's a great example in that sense.
Yeah, this is actually very interesting, and it somewhat answers my next, like, one question I was about to ask about, are there any projects where the contractors and consultants are also involved in brief development? And I think this particular project is a very beautiful example of how the involvement of another consultant in the brief development can actually elevate it so much. So
Just to add to that also, so actually it was not just a direct thing of we just went with a kund. We actually did the proposal for both of it. When you're filling into the land and raising that entire land, what's the kind of amount you're incurring in terms of raising the land, and what's the kind of ecological disturbance you're doing to the land. vis-a-vis the one where you are digging into the land and welcoming the water into this format where it becomes a stepped well. And so two proposals were actually put in front of her so that she could choose, and she chose to go with the kund,
Okay.
knowing the ecological disturbances vis-a-vis the ecological benefits, and knowing the cost variations between the two options.